All right. So, starting with development, we're going to start with the first psychologist to really start talking about how people develop, and it's Sigmund Freud. Now, a couple things about Freud before we really start delving into his ideas. When it comes to Freud, we have we have accepted so much of Freud that we just consider it part of just how people are. It's really the best way to describe it. You see his ideas show up in cartoons. If you've ever seen the shoulder angel and the shoulder devil, for example, that is a very Freudian idea. The ideas that we can be influenced by um, forces and ideas and desires that we don't even totally understand is in essence a Freudian idea. The only thing we really have left to really talk about when it comes to Freud, strangely enough, are the parts where he is either A, wrong, or B, makes people uncomfortable. And that's just kind of how it is with Freud. A lot of people kind of followed on after Freud, really ran with his ideas. But so remember, he is the first to really try to describe and come up with an idea and a theory as to how people develop. What are the key stages? What takes someone from being a small baby to being a 15-year-old? What has to happen along that path? What separates a baby from a 15-year-old? These are some of those types of questions that he is kind of grappling with. And then from there, he grapples with the ideas of, well, what happens to somebody if these stages don't work quite right. They don't hit the stages at the same time, or they get stuck. And these are, again, these are questions that people have. You maybe have had them before when you see somebody acting weird in a class or something, or just out being around in the world. And so that's kind of to set this a little bit, because also the thing with Freud is he did not necessarily have the vocabulary, the words, to really try to describe what he was talking about. A lot of people kind of say Freud is obsessed with sex. He is. But part of it is, for Freud, sexual. So first, before we start delving into this stuff, a warning. This is very controversial, even today in the realm of psychology. Many critics within psychology have made it their career to kind of debunk this, and some of the other people that we'll look at in the days to come, uh, you can kind of see the anti-Freudianness, if that's even a word, um, behind their work. But what also happens is, in general, and this is kind of when like laymen, non very psychological, astute people kind of miss the point a little bit, is because can't talk, is because they become a bit fixated on more extreme words used in his description. So, needless to say, a bit of maturity is required in this, a bit more so than others, or you're going to miss kind of what Freud was trying to convey a little bit. This is some heavy stuff. And yes, it can make people feel a little bit uncomfortable. So, first, what is going on? And we'll get to this idea when we do personality, and we'll kind of go into Freud's theory of personality. But in essence, it's this. Freud believed that our lives are built around this kind of battle between tension or anxiety, kind of a word that kind of comes along that kind of fills in a lot of the missing stuff, and pleasure. So what are the things that give you concern? What are the things that make you happy? And in this tension is a buildup of, for lack of a better term, sexual energy. Now, for Freud, sexual does not mean sex per se. It means anything that is a pleasurable action or thought. So eating a piece of pie is sexual. Watching a good movie, like the Avengers or something, is sexual. Pretty much anything that makes you happy is kind of that. Um, so again, not necessarily sexual within the modern sense. Having a good friend, sexual. But again, not you want to, make babies with them or something. Not that stuff necessarily. There is that component to it, but it's not necessarily that. So, with that, Freud believed that there were 5 stages that were critical to the development of our personality. And one of those components within our personality is called the id. And the id is pretty much the wild man side of us. We'll go into what the id is a little bit later. It's a bit more complex than just the wild side, but be aware of that. But the id must be mastered at each stage. So you got 5 stages. The id is going to rear its head at each stage. What a person has to do is master the id at that stage. So pretty much, in essence, take control of it. That's what's kind of crazy about it. If a person is unable to master the id, a person is going to develop a fixation, where a person's sexual energy, which Freud called the libido, becomes invested at a particular stage. If this happens, a person cannot move forward. So you can literally have a 30, 40, 50-year-old stuck at stage 1 of their lives. And really the way to kind of see this, according to Freud, and kind of using a little bit of modern language as well, is to see how that person deals with anxiety. Because anxiety, no matter what, anxiety is a normal thing. You can be, a test tomorrow. Ooh, pop test. That will probably cause you anxiety. This coronavirus thing can cause a bit of anxiety. So anything can cause anxiety. Anything that makes you go, ew, I don't like that. That causes that little internal tension issue. That's anxiety. So the first stage is what Freud called the oral stage. This is when you pop out of your mama's womb till you're about 1 year to 18 months old. So about a year to a year and a half. And Freud said that pretty much the libido is centered around a baby's mouth. So sucking, biting, eating. Because again, when it comes to the baby at that age, the only real connection with anybody, in a weird sense, and again, this is according to Freud, is, eating. Usually a baby is eating from their mother, drinking milk from the breasts and those types of things. So what happens is this, and here's kind of the weird conundrum. If you overfeed a baby or if you underfeed a baby, so when a baby cries and they're hungry, what should a mom do? Should a mom automatically drop everything and run to the baby? Or should the mom wait? And here's kind of the catch-22 for parents. And then this is kind of, again, Freud said this. If a mom or parent is too quick with it, a child will learn to turn to food to deal with that anxiety. So again, why do people smoke? Ultimately is to alleviate some form of anxiety. Again, this is a Freudian idea. This is taking Freud and kind of applying it. So somebody who smokes cigarettes, marijuana, whatever, it's because they have some form of anxiety. People who bite nails, people who stress eat. If a child is taking care of way too much, maybe they can learn to trust too much. If a child is denied, they learn not to trust. The main thing is really this. and this kind of goes beyond kind of, the food and all the other stuff. The child learns, what does it mean to trust? Can I trust the people who are closest to me? That's the question. And food kind of serves as the catalyst for that kind of thing. The next stage is the anal stage. So this is about a year to 18 months to about 3 years. This is centered around the potty training time. Again, a lot of children are potty trained around 3-ish, 2 to 3. And what happens at this stage is the child realizes that they are their own autonomous person. And what happens is the id then comes into conflict with kind of the outside world. Again, a little bit of side trivia. This is often when the child's first word is said, and that first word is usually no. And that's kind of the thing, because at this point, the child is testing what they're doing. They're testing their limits. How far is mommy and daddy going to let me go? If mommy and daddy tell me no to do something, because again, that's something that a lot of little kids hear a lot of. They hear no constantly. Often it's because, mommy and daddy are going to make sure little Timmy doesn't stick his fingers in the electrical socket, but little Timmy doesn't understand. If I stick my fingers in this small little hole, I'm going to receive an electric shock that is going to blast me across the room and probably stop my heart. He doesn't know that. All he knows is mommy and daddy are keeping them from doing what they want to do. So, as a parent, this can happen. If it is dealt with too harshly, Freud said that a child can become punctual, be tight-fisted with money, be the perfect rule follower. This is where we get the word anal retentive, where somebody is so precise and so exacting with everything that it's like they're very inflexible. If they're not dealt with harsh enough, or they're dealt with too leniently, this child can learn to become, messy, disorganized. When they hit their teenage years, when they hit that 13 stage and onward, they can become rebellious. Or on the flip side, they can learn to become very, very giving. It just depends. Each child is different, so that's the thing to really take away from those. So the next stage, around 3 years old to about 5 or 6, children enter what Freud called the phallic stage. And mainly the idea is this: children become aware of the sexual differences of boys and girls. Now, does not necessarily mean they understand the plumbing. In fact, they shouldn't understand the plumbing. But it's more of they understand boys are this way, girls are this way. They're kind of, this is when they start going to school for the first time. There's a boys' bathroom, there's a girls' bathroom. Little Timmy's not allowed in the girls' bathroom. Little Susie isn't allowed into the boys' bathroom. Boys kind of dress a certain way. Girls dress a certain way. So that's really what Freud meant when he said children become aware of sexual differences. It's, a lot of the cultural stuff and that kind of stuff. Now, around this time, feelings of resentment, rivalry, jealousy, fear. This is kind of where those things emerge for the first time. And again, fear does not necessarily mean I be scared. It's that, lack of a better term, that sense of dread. There are things that you dread. Again, today we all have things we dread, but again, around this time, this is where that dread sense starts to come in. And it really kind of comes down to this. In boys, you have what's called the Oedipus complex. Girls, they call it the Electra complex. Boys have, in essence, a fear of castration, which means their piece parts gets removed. And girls, they realize that they don't have one, but They want one. Again, this is one of those parts of this theory that kind of makes people really raise an eyebrow. Because in essence, what people are saying, at least what people are hearing, is little Timmy wants to get with mommy, little Sally wants to get with daddy. And yes, in that way. Not quite. Not quite. It's really more along the lines of, one, the children become aware of those differences. And because they become aware, in essence, they seek out the opposite. Little boys, or boys, well, little boys, they want to kind of get with the opposite. They know there's something different about the other gender. And girls the same way. They realize there's something different. So a little boy will gravitate towards mom, a little girl will gravitate towards dad. And around this time as well, even though it's not really in the notes, but this is something that some other people have come along and kind of filled in the stuff. This is also where, again, you'll see like the little boy, dressed up as a fairy princess or something, or the little girl acting out in, tomboy behaviors, quote unquote. And really the idea is to figure out for a child, what does this mean to be a boy or a girl? And ultimately the idea, what's supposed to happen is this is resolved through identification, where the child will, in essence, use their parent. So little Timmy will look to daddy, little Susie will look to mommy as a model, and they'll start to model their behavior, in essence, to be like that. And that's what Freud called identification. And then you have the latency stage. Nothing really happens here. There's about 5 to 6 to around the time when you hit puberty. There's really no development. Pretty much all that libido stuff, it all pretty much goes dormant, and is really directed outward towards activities. So schools, hobbies, making friends. Sometimes they call this the cootie stage, where like little boys will kind of segregate, little girls will kind of segregate into their tribes, and what's really supposed to happen here is the little boys and the little girls, and their kind of separate parts, will, in essence, learn from each other. And this is a bit more of a Piagetian idea, but they'll learn how to kind of interact and play, and in essence learn the basics of how to live in a society at this point. Then you have the genital stage. This is when you hit puberty till pretty much you're about to die, when you're 90 years old plus. And what happens is, puberty hits, all those sexual feelings reemerge, but they're focused outside of the family. So whereas when you were young, 1 to 3, to pretty much around the time right before you hit the latency stage, you look towards the family for everything. What's happening is now you're looking outside. And really what's happening is you are looking for a mate. So it's about the same thing as the phallic stage, where you're looking for something to kind of complete you. Now you're looking for, again, not so much your parents to complete you, but you're looking for someone outside of your immediate family to complete you. And in the end, the successful resolution of this means you settle down in a loving heterosexual relationship with a single person around 20 years old. So no polygamy or anything like that. But here's the rub. If there's any fixations, or as Freud called them, neuroses, from an earlier stage, here is where they're going to manifest as a behavior. So if you were held up at any stage, if you were held up at stage 1, or stage 2 or stage 3, if you are held up in the oral stage or the anal stage or the phallic stage, well, now they're going to be put on blast for the entire world to judge you over it. Kind of, sort of. Kind of a half joke. So these are the kind of examples of psychological fixations. If, again, these usually emerge around the genital stage. But again, if somebody is stuck at the oral stage, again, with that anxiety, you're going to have people, putting things in their mouths to deal with it, either smoking, gum chewing, nail biting. If somebody who was, anally fixated, a sense of orderliness, obsessiveness, being rigid, those can be examples of somebody who's kind of stuck at that stage. Then you got the phallic stage, vanity, exhibitionism, needing to be the center of attention, an overblown sense of pride. But again, mainly these are just things that kind of show up in the, in the genital stage. If it's kind of a weird way to describe it, the idea is, again, if somebody is stuck at a certain stage because they did not necessarily move on from there, whenever there's that anxiety, whatever that anxiety may be, these are kind of the behaviors that somebody will show if they're caught at that stage. So again, it's really just how do people deal with anxiety, and seeing, and if you notice, well, this is kind of what Freud said. If you notice the behaviors, you can see kind of where they're stuck on the stage. The idea, in essence, is to be able to look at anxiety and be kind of rational with it. That's really kind of what we're supposed to develop towards. In essence, we need to become rational beings. If something is giving us anxiety, we need to be able to stop, look at it, and go, oh, this is what is causing me anxiety. This is why it is causing me anxiety. And then take steps to actually deal with the anxiety. And this is kind of what happens. First, remember, this is the first kind of all-encompassing theory of personality. A lot of critics do say that this is too complex to actually test. Some critics have said this is sexist. Some critics have said this is pervy. There's been a lot of criticisms of this theory. It is not really widely used in practice, but it is one of those things that's kind of discussed and debated. Little different ideas from it will kind of be pulled here and, tried to used maybe a little bit to try to maybe figure out why people act the way that they do. It's not, they don't really take the whole theory and throw it out there, but they take little pieces of it and use it to try to explain mainly why adults act. So again, these ideas can be a tad cringy. But again, this was one of the first real attempts to try to describe the development of personality from beginning to end. Other psychologists will come along and try to do their part, and that's what we'll start going into more tomorrow. But again, this was the first time. So take it for what it is. And that's pretty much it for this. After this, there's a little video which kind of uses this idea and use it to explain people who have daddy issues. And then after that, there's a little writing part where I kind of want you to really think about these ideas and, really just ask yourself this. What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? And just tell me why. The prompt is there in the assignment. And just answer those, turn it in, and I will see you next time, which will probably be tomorrow, or which will be tomorrow. And I hope this worked out for you guys. If there's any questions or anything, shoot me a comment in the help feed, and I will try my best to answer it as quickly as possible. That's about all. Peace out.